Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Humanity will return to its primitive state and will live in caves, in the bowels of the earth. Read carefully. I have just understood something very important, and I have the deep conviction that what I am about to say will happen. I didn't have a divine revelation or anything like that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist either. Although we have explored almost the entire surface of the earth, the caves and what lies underground remains a great mystery. It's been a while since I felt like this was the end of something, and I know I'm not the only one. Over the years, interest in caving will grow. We think that when we have screwed up our planet, we can simply go to Mars, for example. It's a utopia. We will go underground. We will find new ways to prosper, and we will destroy ourselves from within the earth. This is the return to primitive life, and it will happen sooner than you think. The latest generation is also the last to live on the surface.
There have been reports of an incoming event, like what Chan Thomas described. If so, it doesn't seem likely that regular people will have access to these underground areas.
How does he plan to live in a cave forever? You know it's dark in there, right? Unless you're standing at the mouth of the cave. Where will you get your light from? What will you eat? How will you handle vitamin D deficiency? What about all the bat viruses? Will you kill the bats with your nasty germs? Will you light a fire in the cave? What will you burn? Will you end yourself with carbon monoxide? Thinking humans can survive a long time in caves is preposterous. That said, I sure do love exploring them, but I go home after. Mammoth Cave is my favorite. If you're ever in the area, take the 7-mile tour completely underground. They built some cool shit down there during the New Deal.
They're expecting the Greys to take care of them like last time after the Cataclysm with their cultivated fungi and biotech. Unfortunately, the reason for the cover-up and the foot dragging over disclosure is that the Greys are nearly extinct due to overuse of chemical pesticides, and the salvation the elites are hoping for isn't there anymore.
That Earth is in an endless cycle of death and rebirth, as is all life. We have cataclysms every so often, like 10 to 17,000 years or so, killing almost everyone and everything. As the rich of the last cycle emerge from their bunkers after years of searching for life, they bring back what was lost with the end of the earth. Farming, medicine, technology, etc., and they are revered as gods of sorts. Adam, Gilgamesh, Noah, Osiris, and many more. They become the origin stories that we hear and read today. This has happened an endless amount of times, and we have lived many cycles. Most evidence is lost or hidden, but some remains. Like the pyramids across the globe, the bomb shelters carved in stone in India that depict nuclear war, and the many things we continue to find, and the few that are brought to public attention continually, make scientists rethink whatever. They make them rethink because they are not part of this timeline, but one long before that is dead and gone. Yet that is also the multiverse. In this form of reality and dimension, we can only perceive time as linear. But from the fourth dimension, we see it all happening simultaneously. Worlds similar to our own current, but vastly different. There have been authors that claim that the worlds of their books existed in some way, like they got a glimpse of it, that they did not create it so much as retell what they saw. Apparently, a friend of Tolkien claimed on a radio interview a long time ago that Tolkien didn't create Middle-earth so much so as create a retelling of a history. Gods, dragons, giants, orcs, elves, hobbits, great beasts, and more may have all existed in one cycle or another.
Doesn't the universe die out too? Like a big crunch is supposedly supposed to happen in the future, followed by another big bang. Do you think this can explain parallel universes? Maybe black holes experienced a big bang and now contain parallel universes on the other side, and that's where the multiverse theory comes into play.
Of course it dies, but as with all else, it is born again. I think you are close, if not on the money. With its death and rebirth, it may again create parallel universes, just as the cycles of Earth create parallel realities. As above, so below, as is left so is right and whatnot. Since we experience time linearly as we are in this moment, it's hard to say for certain, but I believe life is infinite beyond the minor delay that is death. Our cells live and die, we live and die, the world lives and dies, the universe lives and dies. But we all come back again. In a dimension not bound by linear time, we would see this all playing out simultaneously, forever. Black holes are an interesting one that I can't really speak on. They very well could be portals or weak spots between dimensions, realities, universes, all of the above or none of the above.
I would wonder if your soul and consciousness could pick a specific time frame to incarnate into. Like you die in this timeline, a couple million years go by that you have no clue about because you were dead, and suddenly you wake up during the 1990s on Earth too.
I like to think that's the end result of enlightenment, to take hold of consciousness and direct it through the stream to where you want to feel the need to be. I have one specific vision I keep in mind daily, whether I'm creating a new reality or finding one closest to what my heart of hearts yearns for. I keep in mind where I want to be. I feel as though, while I may not be entirely me anymore after this life passes, I will retain some of what I know and some of what makes me who I am in my next life. I am not claiming to be enlightened, mind you. I hope to get there one day, but there is a lot left to this journey. So yeah, here's to hoping. Haha.
Interdimensional entities are real. Some are good, some are evil. Demonic possession is real. Crypto-terrestrials are also real. They built extremely ancient civilizations. Atlantis was real. Some of them are still around. There are bases underground on Earth, on the Moon, and Mars. Cyclical cataclysms are real, may or may not be natural. Some might have been the product of war. Greys are biorobots. Psi is real, and all humans have the ability to use it, though some are more adept. Some of these entities want our souls, whatever that means. Some hate us, some care for us, some are neutral. It appears we are caught up in a war or conflict between several of these groups. Religions are the product of these groups guiding humans for their own side's goals. They have messed with our biology since prehistory and likely still do, with abductions and hybrids. Governments were freaked about the depth of their ignorance, complexity of the situation and power of the entities, and potential infiltration. They keep it secret to avoid social instability, but also to deceive the others on their level of understanding. Normies couldn't handle that. Our entire civilization is in many ways engineered, and we are the last on a long list of civilizations that were destroyed in mass. And we are preyed on like cattle by eldritch abominations, which some psychos worship to curry their favor. And of course, the normie has been lied to about all of this. Many UFOs are AI drones that appear to monitor the planet and the US for some reason. This is also their home we're mucking up, and we are their cattle. There are specific hotspots where they seem to enter, exit, refuel, and they are attracted to certain things such as humans with strong psi ability and nukes. The EMP blast caused by nukes has the ability to disable some craft's propulsion, probably being electrogravitic. This caused several accidental crashes in the early days, and has now become a way to actively shoot them down. This is why UFOs appear near nuclear facilities, nuclear-powered and armed ships and submarines and vehicles transporting nuclear materials and weapons. Aliens fear the nuke. That is the reason why UFO activity massively escalated in the late 1940s. Other UFOs have been retrieved in archaeological digs. Where or when this happened hasn't been stated, but Tom has hinted the lore of occult Nazi flying saucers is real. Furthermore, several of Tom's associates have hinted at some degree of time travel and multiple timelines. A distortion of space also involves a distortion in time, so UFO propulsion physics might also allow weird shit. Some UFOs might be time travelers. Lou talked about how the boundary between past and present is not clear-cut, but like the burning end of a cigarette, with an intermediate area that is somehow in flux. Also, linearity of time is in many ways a limitation of our perception, rather than fundamental reality. So the conflict we are caught up on might not only be multiplanetary and interdimensional, but also temporal. Try to tell your grandma about that.
The world started ending in 2012. The process generally referred to as the end of the world began in 2012. Nowhere were we quoted a timeline for how long this process would take.
The world has ended every couple thousand years or so, due to a periodic event that happens in the Earth's core that disrupts electromagnetic properties of mantle currents and lets the torque from Earth's rotation subsequently shift the crust until Earth finds a new dynamic balance. It's thought that this process ultimately gets started as we pass through certain reversal zones in the Milky Way, where some natural cosmic radiation or influence gradually causes the polarity of Earth's magnetic field to shift, weakening it for a time before reestablishing itself after these apocalyptic sort of reset events. Said events also serve as a way to shift Earth's resources around via the crust shifting, massive inundations, etc. Mayans, Native Americans, and Polynesians actually all share a common heritage from a continent called MITZU that was in the Pacific but got wrecked 11,500 years ago during one of those cataclysms along with Atlantis in the Atlantic. This pre-Mayan Naga culture likely persisted in Mayan stories, and that's why they fixate on the heavens and dates so much, because they had faint memories from their ancestors that survived a previous cataclysm. They were trying to keep track of when the next one would occur. It's likely that 2012 was the start of us moving into a magnetic reversal zone, and that everything getting worse is some sort of side effect on humans and animals, maybe something to do with our brains. Read the Adam and Eve story by Chan Thomas if you can find the scanned PDF copies floating around the internet. The actual book was banned by the CIA in the 90s, after the author published his findings that he'd been working on since the 40s. Dude was also interestingly well connected within the military-industrial complex, as his day job was defense contract engineering. I forgot to mention, based off the dates of the last cataclysms and math, we've got something like a 600-ish year window where this stuff can pop off. Between that and the Mayan calendar measurements correlating with the regression in people's behavior, I'd say the dude's math was probably accurately within the ballpark. Probably won't happen during any of our natural lives if we only just entered this reversal zone. But a few generations from now, folks should be nervous. I think our ultra-wealthy aren't taking any risk, though, and decided to build their doomsday bunkers now. Mostly on the eastern side of inland mountains, kind of like the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. That's arguably one of the best places in the U.S. to ride things out.
I know it seems like it's getting shittier, and in some circumstances that's true, but a world built upon lies tends to unravel. Especially in the US, this is the case. Its history is at best half-truths, and at its worst, bold-faced lies that are protected with fictional security oaths to fictional corporations posing as governmental agencies. To quote other older folks, it truly is all lies.
CERN's invocation of the Higgs field in 2012 managed to dislocate the world from its natural timeline. The fan got turned off, so to speak, but the blades haven't stopped moving yet. The world will keep floating into further obscurity and strangeness. As for the individual, there are only two choices before the end: more suffering or less suffering. I recommend the Buddhist Eightfold Path, or Taoism, or any spiritual path that focuses on cultivating calm and compassion and removing clutter from your life. Those who don't practice, most of the world population, will end up becoming more restless, hateful, and delusional.
The yugas are calculated by a span of vibration. Our Lemurian calculations of time will not be translatable into calendars of the Kali Yuga, so at that time there will be confusion about the length of time each yuga is supposed to contain. But it is discernible when another yuga is imminent by the changes that occur within the population. As this planet moved through time and space, different races came from the various planets and settled on one area of it or another. During one phase of planetary configurations, ceremonies would be active in one temple to bring through into dense manifest form a group from a certain planet. And as the planets moved into another configuration, the place on Earth polarizing the rays and race of that planet would become inactive, and another race from another planet would come through at a different location through ceremony. Mankind migrated to this planet in his divine soul body during the Sat Yuga, the Age of Enlightenment. He had reached a final stage of evolution on his native planet. The risk in migrating to a fire planet was great, but so was the reward. They were, however, at a place in evolution requiring a planet with fire in it to catalyze them through new experiences into completing their unfoldment to the final realization of the self. Souls came from the other planets to Earth for one of two reasons: Either they came to realize the self because they had not previously done so and were just drifting in bliss, or were great beings who already had the self realized and came to help the others. In the Sat Yuga, the air was thick and the earth lush and tropical. The thick clouds of gases and healthful substances floating in the air were the materials the divine souls that came to the fire planet, as they referred to it, would use to materialize a physical body around the etheric body of the soul to express through while living on Earth. As more and more came to Earth in their etheric bodies, ceremonies were performed in a scientific way by those who had already arrived, offering food and flowers, cut fruits and other ambrosia before them, so that they could absorb some of the organic essences into the etheric body and materialize around and through it Earth bodies. Priestly scientists would make food offerings and bathe a pedestal-like form as a point of concentration. The celestial beings would stand on the pedestal and absorb the Earth's pungent substances, and with it materialize strong physical bodies. There was no gender, no male and female or such a thing as death or reproduction or even sleep. There was no concept of hunger or pain. They could fly easily and freely in their new Earth body in the Sat Yuga, by mentally lifting up into the air by using the power within their spine and travel anywhere. These bodies were impervious to cold or heat. The air was so thick and healthy, they would become nourished simply by breathing in deeply. They didn't really need to eat then, as the air completely filled their bodies with pranic essence each time they took a deep breath. The closest they ever came to the concept of death was when the physical elements just dissolved under the power of realizing the self, and the essence of their individuality returned to the planet from whence they came, fully matured, having completed their mission on the fire planet. Everything existed in its fullness in the Sat Yuga, with a total and open giving of all the world's goods, physically, superconsciously, and intellectually, between beings. There was no feeling at all of personal ego. Our original Earth bodies were boned very soft in the Sat Yuga. The bones at any place could bend as much as 2 inches or more. This was because of the atmosphere at that time, which was similar to the atmosphere underwater at great depths. The atmosphere will change again in the Dvapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, and the bones will harden. In the Sat and Treta Yugas, we lived and live mainly in our minds. No distinction between the inner bodies and outer bodies was ever made, and each conversed freely one with another, through verbal and mental means, about their experiences at night while their fleshy bodies slept, and they soared on rays of light and sound to visit friends on other planets, as freely as they talked of occurrences within the immediate surroundings through the day. The more advanced ones could leave the body into light and sound and go to another Yuga cycle. If they wanted to go into a 10th Yuga cycle, they would go to another solar system where it was occurring. Many of these divine earthly Sat Yuga bodies, constructed from fruit ambrosia, herbal essences, and the pungent air, could no longer fly and have been eaten by the carnivorous beings of the animal kingdom, the inhabitants remaining from the last Kali Yuga. As a result of having been devoured by animals, these souls got caught within the evolutionary cycle of the particular species that had eaten their original body. Then, through the cycle of birth and death, they emerged again, but were captured in the instinctive nerve system of animal bodies. Then, through the long process of mutation and reincarnation, they finally, after great struggles and help from the Mahadevas, cultivated a body similar to the first Earth body devoured long ago. This human body had animal instincts and was difficult to live in. Our laboratories cultivate species of animals in order to breed bodies similar to the original body, and when a soul had become caught in the animal kingdom, experiments were conducted in these laboratories, near the temple of the planet whence the soul had originally come, to release him from this bondage into a birth of a body he could be more comfortable in. One of the major functions of some of the temple's laboratories during this time of the end of the Treta Yuga is to cause the release of the souls from the animal kingdom through sacrifice. Often the soul would be released from an animal body and be able to incarnate into a human family attending the ceremony. The original bodies by the end of the Sat Yuga contained a high content of oil, whereas it is found that the flesh bodies have a high content of other kinds of liquids, and even the blood is different. This remains so through the Kali Yuga. Because of the high oil content in the original bodies, the bones were soft and springy, much like snake or fish bodies. All through the Treta Yuga, we were able to maintain these fibrous bodies with a high content of oil and keep them soft and pliable. In these soft, pliable bodies, we were easily in touch with beings on other planets. As the Sat Yuga ended with the advent of the Treta Yuga, the ratio of divine beings to those entering the animal kingdom was something like 3 to 1. 1/2 to 1/2 was the ratio during the Treta Yuga. But now, toward its end, the ratio is 1 in the original body to 3 in the others. So in this Treta Yuga, our basic challenge is to hold the vibration that existed through the Sat Yuga within a core group of us, so that the others could continue their peaceful existence without experiencing drastic changes. We, 1/3 of the entire population, lived separately from all the others, as all but a few of us were in the original fibrous bodies. We cover the physical bodies and our original bodies with a shiny yellow substance that is a conductor of force, and in this way are more able to feel the rays of the central universal sun. Some of the most highly evolved souls would grow another body within them and then divide themselves into 2. These then would divide themselves and become 4. They would just slide out from themselves and one would energize the new one. When we all arrived on this planet, our history tells us each one of us had emanating from us a certain combination of sounds or tones. This was the way we spoke, and as we thought, these tones radiating out from our body changed. The basic tones were our names. After we manifested the first earth body, these tones ceased and the power of speech came. Surrounding our pagoda-like temples are places where we live, these vast homes in which we were alone and apart from the other 2/3 of the population of this planet, were monastic in nature and protocol. Monasteries were always located where they were needed most, and always within walking distance of another monastery. The reason for this was that our large monastery would hold a vibration of darshan for the surrounding area, extending out for a radius of some 50 to 100 miles. The purpose of these Lemurian monasteries was to keep the total vibration of the deity and the religion alive and vibrant through the cells of the people who lived in the vicinity. The monastics living together in these monasteries, totally devoted to their sadhana and religious practices, held this strong darshan vibration of the deity steady, and it radiated out in a circle in a radius of 50 to 100 miles. The next monastery would be placed on the perimeter of the emanating darshan of the one nearest to it. In this way there was no break in continuity, and therefore they were always within walking or flying distance of each other as they spread out across the land. Our power of being able to fly is beginning to wane, and it is impossible to travel for long distances, and so we fly in games and for sport as we exercise this fast-fading faculty. The sign of our losing our ability to fly, it has been predicted, is the official beginning of the Dvapara Yuga's advent in space and time. We are told by our prophets that nearly everything on Earth will be approximately a quarter the size that it is now Treta Yuga toward the end of the Kali Yuga. The trees, the plants, the Lemurians, the animals. Cataclysms begin the Dvapara Yuga, and the race of celestial beings, having lost their original bodies, become grounded. The Lemurians that became divided from the others through the formation of vast bodies of water, so great they were unable to go around them through the thousands of circles, took on other ways of living. Early Dravidians perpetuate Lemurian culture. In the end of the Dvapara Yuga is seen the destruction of everything that had been built in the Treta Yuga in the dark area of the world. The races of light and the races of darkness become divided by water. The air becomes thinner. During this time there is inner darkness within man in one part of the world, and inner light in another part, creating a balance of sorts. Monasteries form to hold the forces of light and keep the balance of the race, whereas the races in darkness will not have any monasteries and just do agriculture and care for the body. Soon man forgets those virtues and the proper way of moving in the mind, and using its powers as he begins to work for dark purposes. It is during this time he will have mental battles with one another, and the black arts will be played with as games. Everyone will try to influence everyone else through the powers of his mind. Thought becomes very important to everyone. Everyone tries to program everyone else's thoughts. It is predicted that the Kali Yuga will begin when the first human kills another, and will actually end in its fullness when this process of killing one another ceases. It will be in the Kali Yuga, after the souls emerge in human form, with desires, passions, and reproductive fervor, that racial and religious groups of many different kinds will begin. Before that, there is only one religion. Cosmic rays from the central sun will become stronger and stronger, heralding the dawn of the next Sat Yuga. There will be a new vibration, and everything will change. Mankind will again understand himself, and virtue will dawn as the Sat Yuga quickly unfolds its strength. Many who are not ready for the light of this Yuga will perish. Those who are of the Sat Yuga will experience the beauty of its dawn, unaffected by the astrological and earth changes which will claim the lives of the unenlightened bound by the fierce dragon of lust. The central sun is an unseen sun, just the opposite of our sun, as if it weren't. But everything revolves around it, and the rays are felt like the rays of the self are felt, but not seen. It is that brink of the absolute consciousness. The yugas occur as a result of the revolution around the central sun, which is likened to an intense hole in space. There have been several series of yugas before this one where similar occurrences repeated themselves. The yugas are time cycles of time, mind, and space. Time travels in a circle in the inner mind, not a straight line. Space is a circle too. Space, stars, planets, moons, and time and mind all revolve around a central sun. Our Shastras stress. There are planets similar to the Earth, but older than the Earth that are way forward in yugas yet to come. This planet is not yet that far into them. But there are great souls on the Earth who have been in other yugas or other Earths, and are now back again to guide. One could decide to come back to Earth in the middle of the next Sat Yuga and go into Samadhi, come out and be there. These time cycles will have nothing to do with the concept of time at the end of the Kali Yuga. The middle of the next Sat Yuga as well as the middle of the last Sat Yuga exist right now, as well as this current point in time exists right now. There are planets in this universe much older than the Fire Planet. The inhabitants of these older and larger planets do not live on the surface of their planet. They use the surface only like a park, and to provide their nourishment and live in underground places that may have been constructed millions of years ago. It is necessary to live for several of these yugas on Earth in order to earn admittance to those planets. During the next Sat Yuga, knowledge of working with and through the rays of the central sun will return. Then man will live underground again as he did before he came to this planet, and then remember how to travel easily through space. He will never travel easily in space until he lives under the surface of the Earth, our prophets clearly state. We are advised that during the first part of the Sat Yuga, mankind will spend his time overcoming the reaction of the night of the Kali Yuga. The fear will leave, and the memory of it. It will become increasingly easier for everyone to live on the planet. He will live underground and travel to other planets with the grace and ease that he, in his celestial body, has always been accustomed to. Our Shastras say that in the depth of the inner mind there is just a thin veil separating one planet from another, for space, time, and mind are synonymous. In the external mind, created because of the animal kingdom, this thin veil is seen as billions of miles of empty space. Therefore, no one has ever really been separated, because in the inner mind the planets are not great distances apart. There is a yoga practice where one can go into the self and come out at any point of time that he chose in the future, faster than you could blink your eye and be just as you were when you went in. The knowledge of sound is one of our sciences. One of our skills was in moving physical objects from temple to temple with our minds with the help of the devas. This method was also used by us in building our temples and monasteries. Large stones were easily moved in this way. We could apport people also. Placing awareness into different currents of the body produces sound. This sound is inaudible but allows others to feel how you are faring. If someone is angry, their awareness is going through certain currents within them, and it is felt by others. It is noisy. The arts of weaving and working in stone are quite advanced. Craftsmanship is long and tedious and sometimes consumes an entire lifetime of an apprentice. Each one is a specialist in carving some part of our rock cave city environments. Dancing and levitation were some of our other skills, as well as mesmerism. We could create a burning forest fire in the mind of another, but it would not actually be there, though he would see it. It was in this way we controlled the large and small animals and kept them away from us. All of these skills and many more were quite natural to us. We also write books, and after a book is finished, it is burned at a ceremony that causes it to be imprinted in the inner ether, and old and young souls alike in other temple monasteries can read it. News is also conveyed in this way. The inner and the outer are one. Our prophets tell us that toward the end of the Dvapara Yuga, as the Kali Yuga begins to be felt, we will make a strong distinction between the inner and the outer. Our nourishment is divided into 4 areas, similar to the 4 great forces of this planet. The first area is the vegetable kingdom, consumed by the cow and other milk-producing animals. This provided the muscular structure with great strength. The next area is the life-giving seeds and nuts and tiny kernels within seeds that provide nerve strength and vigor to our bodies. The third area is the milk of the bee, derived from the subtle pollen of our flowers. This protects our bodies, as well as the entire combination within our nourishment from deteriorating forces. This excretion of the bee protects against astral forces promulgated from the animal kingdom indigenous to this planet. The fourth area within our nourishment is the outgrowth of trees and bushes which can be picked without destroying the plant. Thus, fruit, seeds, nuts, honey and milk mixed together in proper combination compose our nourishment. Though we eat when the sun is high and fill up fully our bodies with this nourishment, we take time and eat long. When the body becomes frail or ill, various herbs that were brought with us from the planet we came from, and strong spices were added to the nourishment and taken before nightfall. This exercise was performed 3 times a day. At sunrise, high noon, and sunset, we would hold the physical body immovable in certain difficult positions and breathe it strenuously. Breath pulsing through the lungs while facing the sun's rays, consciously absorbing them into every cell of the body, kept it flexible, healthy, and easy to live in. Some of these positions in which we stand are legs far apart, hands and arms stretched up high while breathing strenuously and very deeply until a tiredness comes to the body and leaves the body because of the new energy infused into it from the sun's rays and the breath. One leg outstretched and opposite arm, both raised, is another position we assumed. Still another position, standing erect, arms to the side, heels touching, head thrown back as far as possible, facing the noonday sun. If the body ails or does not function properly, stand in the rays of the morning, noon, or evening sun, we are told, and move it vigorously to the count of 3. On the third move, stop and hold the body in whatever position it naturally assumes as long as possible. It will of itself learn to assume the complementary position that will cure the discomfort through vigorous breathing and the rays of the sun. There were many pagoda-shaped temples with a high, raised platform in the center of them for the divine deity. When the time is right, the deity or our guru would tell us to dismantle the entire monastery and seal up the caves, leaving no trace that it ever existed. We would then form a lake where the monastery once was to polarize the cosmic darshan rays, knowing full well that in another yuga the vibration would be felt and the monastery and temple that was there in the Akasha would form again on Earth. The animals themselves would bypass these sanctified areas rather than walk through them, and through the power of our mesmerism the animals would see the entire area surrounded by a sheath of fire.
You can't live in a cave long term. You'll literally die. Below Earth is a negative frequency. Above Earth is a positive one. We can't exist on extremes. The whole nuclear bunker idea is bullshit for anything longer than a year or 2. Your heart will fail. Schumann resonance is what controls your blood pressure. If you enter an area devoid of it, you're fucked.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.